since we've done one of these remotely. So let's start with roll call. So when I say your name, please answer with here. We'll call ourselves to order. Cook?
Here.
Fowler?
Here.
Lambers?
Here.
Nieves?
Here.
Berlinski?
Here.
Shea?
Here.
Ike, I am also here. I am almost here. I'm not missing anybody, am I? It's been a while since I've done it.
You got everybody?
I think I got everybody. Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes, and we had two that we needed to approve. Both the regular meeting from October, is that October 6th? As well as the one from October, sorry, I can't see, I'm so tiny on my screen. Hold up better on here. Do we need to review those separately, probably, I'm thinking?
Oh, thank you, Mallory.
Mallory, what do you think?
I think you can
we should
do them together if you want. In the past, with Planning Commission, I know they often will do them at the same time, but it's up to you guys. I think you can go either way.
Okay, so if everybody's had an opportunity to read through both of those, there were the October 6th regular meeting and then the October 9 special meeting. So I don't know if anybody has any changes or any questions about either of those or wants to make a motion to approve.
I can make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'd support that.
Of course you would. Okay, we'll go through roll call. All those in favor say yes or no.
Yes.
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 Sounds like all the yeses. Okay, it's better than roll call. Thank you. Any opposed? Okay, the meeting minutes from the last two meetings carry, then they are approved. The next item on the agenda is a time for public comment. So for anybody who is here but does not have an item on the agenda, this is an opportunity for them to have something that is not related to a project we have time for on the agenda. And I didn't see anybody on here who did not have a specific project. And I don't know, Mallory, if you do either. I'm scrolling up and down through my images, but I don't see anybody.
Nope, nobody else.
Okay, super. Next item on the agenda is unfinished business, of which there is none, which is shocking. Phil did not think that was accurate. There had to have been something. I was surprised. And since there isn't any, we will move into new business, and that is a COA application. And you're moving too quickly for me, Mallory. For 198 West 11th Street, which is for Bethany and Mark Beckman. So Phil, do you want to tee us up on that one?
Sure. And if I miss any cues that you're giving me, I apologize, but my volume isn't working too well here. But let me get started. This is an application for 198 West 11th Street. It's proposed additions and modifications to both the home and the garage. You received a historic district intensive levels research sheet in your packets. The home is essentially, it's a symmetrical colonial revival home constructed in 1923 with a large east side porch that creates an asymmetry on the first floor level. Stylistically, the home is characterized by return cornices and lintels, a Palladian window, and pilasters on the first and second floor front elevation. And you can make them out, at least some of that out in this photograph. Specifically, the owners are proposing to do the following: to remove the rear mid-1970s addition, including its foundation and exterior cement steps, to construct a new two-story addition and rear porch with work comprised of the addition to be comprised of new basement level bathroom and storage areas outside of the original footprint, expanded interior space on the first level, including a half bath, new entry, expanded kitchen, and a new rear porch, and a remodeled second floor area, including a bathroom outside the original footprint. Two existing historic windows are to be reused on the addition, with one relocated to the first floor south elevation and one relocated to the east second floor addition. All new and repaired exterior wall surfaces to be covered with 11-inch cedar shake siding, stained white to match the existing siding on the house. New windows on the first and second floors of the south elevation addition and a new window on the first floor west elevation are proposed as Anderson E-Series push-out wood aluminum clad casement windows. Proposed is a new painted solid mahogany wood door at the south entrance to the home. All trim materials and dimensions will match the existing home. The new rear porch floor and steps will be poured concrete. The finish on the porch appears to carry the roof lines of the existing home. It is not clear, this is my comment, it is not clear whether the columns will be consistent with the design on the east enclosed porch or a simpler version of a square column. So that's something I'd ask the applicants, the owners, to clarify. Also, the owners proposed the relocation of the existing approximately 14 by 20 foot garage to the rear southwest corner of the lot. An approximately 22 by 20 foot garage addition will be attached to the east side of the relocated garage. All exterior finishes will match the house. There are two garage doors proposed, each one on the existing and new portions of the garage that are Clopay Coachman series, painted wood look steel doors, and there will be a new service door and a relocated existing window placed on the addition. The owners propose to install a new basement egress window on the south side, the rear of the home. An existing basement window in that location will be removed and the opening expanded to accommodate an egress and window well. All basement windows, including this expanded opening, will be removed and replaced with new fiberglass windows due to rot and leaking that is occurring on the existing wood windows. I really didn't have concerns with this. The only items that I thought would be worth clarifying are the introduction of casement windows. While I believe most of the windows on the house are double hung, I could ask them to verify that as well, and the design of the columns on the rear porch. That is all I have. Bethany or Mark, did I miss anything or any additional information you'd like to provide?
So I don't think you missed anything. I did want to say, oh, Mark has something to add, but I did want to say it was really nice to see a lot of familiar faces. There have been some changes on the commission too. So anyway, good to see you all. Did you have something to add?
It was just one change with the door on the garage is actually a replacement, or not a replacement, an existing door that a couple years ago we removed from the, there was a second story balcony coming out of our bathroom. And so the request was that we kept the door and reuse it. So that's the place in which we're planning to reuse it.
Oh, that's great. We love that when that happens.
It is the style that is shown in the images,
Yes.
but it is an existing door that we're reusing. So it's painted wood. And we can, you asked for a couple of clarifications. We can add those now too, if you'd like.
Mhm.
So one of them was asking about the windows. We do actually have some banks of existing casement windows on the, yep, you can see one in the image right there on the west facade. There's also some on the south facade.
Mhm.
You can see there's a bank there too. So casement windows wouldn't necessarily be new to the home, but except for they'll be new windows.
Right, and wherever there's multiple windows, those are always, they're typically casements. So you can see them on the second floor in our stairwell area. And so that's what we wanted to keep consistent with that. And we really liked these windows being the same operational style. So they're actually just push out. It's not a little crank. The same, very similar door screen on them as well that we have with those casements too. So it was the best that we could find to go along with the existing casements.
Is the intent to include the divided light muntins in those as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And the other clarification was the columns.
Yeah.
We do plan on replicating the style of the columns. Yeah, so far that's our plan.
Right. So like the column that you can see on the right-hand side of that south elevation, it would be a similar column. It's hard to see because the screened-in porch is kind of going up to it, but it would be matching that, which is a fluted column. Yeah, so you can see it better on the east side.
Okay. I'm sorry, I may not be hearing it entirely, but there will be a single column on each side?
Correct. Yes, there'd be a single. They'd match an individual column, but there would only be one column. There wouldn't be double columns like we have on both sides of this.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Bethany and Mark, can I ask a question? On your garage, how do you treat the existing gable in terms of adding a large garage to it? What are your thoughts there?
I think, do you have, so that's a great picture to show of the existing garage. If we, I believe there should be an image,
Elevation.
an elevation of, if I maybe, is it up?
In the plans.
Yes. Yep. So you can see right there.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be slightly offset. So very much similar to your garage, John.
I was just going to say how I couldn't be happier with how that came out. It was kind of a compromise. But
yours was the inspiration. So that's what we, we love our garage like as it is. And so a big thing that we're actually doing is relocating the garage rather than tearing it down. Our intent is to actually move it to the back corner of the lot. It's quite far forward right now. And so the plan is to move it back. And then as you can see, the second gable kind of garage is slightly offset back from the front. And yeah.
So when I look at that, the left part would be a foot or so further than the right part from the viewer. Is that?
Yeah, I'm not sure what the exact dimensions are, but yes.
Okay, just enough to, mine might be 12 inches or so. And then are you able to save those, I'm not sure the name, those returns, I think, on the existing garage? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. Are the doors pretty tall? They look like they're taller than the personnel door.
So we're matching the existing opening that's there.
Okay.
So our current garage door is actually blocked down. Like it's not the original garage door.
Okay.
There's blocking that lowered it down to I think make it a more standard size door. So we're going back to the original full opening size. So if you can see there,
okay. Yeah.
You covered it with the box a little bit.
Yeah, they just kind of boxed it down.
All right.
I see. It looks like as if the trim board there is significantly taller along the top than it maybe is the side, just to bring that down.
Exactly. Yep.
Got it.
But Mark can still fit in that door, I take it.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question about the elevations. So in Mallory, we may need to go kind of back and forth between the elevation and the existing for my question, but right now on the porch addition, I call them pilasters, but we were referring to them earlier as columns. Those pilasters seem to be supporting the soffit itself or the underside of that roof system. And typically, and I think it's the case on your house as well, there would actually be a header or what's called an entablature
Mhm.
that would be included so that the capital of that pilaster is not just supporting that flat surface under the soffit.
Yep.
That would typically be thought of as a kind of a grammatical detail. I noticed that your house is pretty true to the classical grammar otherwise. So I would strongly recommend that you pick up that detail.
I agree that that does seem to be something that we are missing. The intent is to match that same detail that's on the porch currently.
Okay.
It looks like it's missing. So if you look at the like slide 25 there, I guess that might just some clarity.
Yeah. So you have a nice entablature that's being carried by those pilasters.
Mm-hmm.
Now that entablature could be less ornate on the back. It could be more rustic, but it should be that header that it becomes a post and lintel composition that the header becomes supported by the pilasters. That should be expressed.
Yep.
For some reason, that's one that doesn't always make it into the elevations, but and then unfortunately you see it in execution also omitted around town. So it's one that is good to watch for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm glad you pointed that out because we definitely don't want to miss that detail. So I'm gonna write that down. If I can find something right there. So we make sure to give the architect that note.
And I think, just kind of playing on the comment of, if it were less ornate, if that were something you were interested in. I know you already said the pilasters would be fluted and replicated and so on, but as a matter of cost savings, I would be very supportive of something that's more stripped down and basic if that were something that you were interested in. But I think it would have to probably be in a different application or something, or administrative approval after the fact type of thing. But if you found out that carpentry was just too much to handle, I think it would be incredibly fitting for the back of the house to have something a little bit more austere.
Yep. And that's where our hope was to definitely start here, being that, it is already on that scene from that back side. So want to start there, but yeah, definitely, I'm sure as building, that's helpful to know that might be an option if we run into that budgetary constraint.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm curious about the garage, the original garage door. It doesn't look like it's centered in the front of the garage. Now in the drawings, it looks like you're recentering it. Is that?
If it is centered, that is incorrect. We would not be relocating the position of the garage door. We'd be keeping it in the same position. So that's a miss.
I'm just curious. I wonder why it's offset. I mean, it looks just slightly offset, not like it's unless they filled in one side or something.
It's exactly. It's kind of I don't know if that's just how they wanted to use it with some things on the other on that side. That's where the entry door is, so to give room for the door to open into the garage potentially. Not quite sure what the rationale was, but looking at the opening that seems to be the original opening for the garage.
I guess personally, I'd want to recenter it, but maybe that's just me looking at it thinking, wow, that would bother me to have that just odd offset. But I don't know. Nick probably would have a better idea of whether, if that was feasible, whether that would just be kind of a bad thing to do.
I don't know, but it is interesting.
Yeah, I see
I'm
what you're
glad you guys
saying.
are saving that garage. That's neat.
Mhm.
Yep.
Agreed. It might be good for their sake more than ours, just to have a look at that. I mean, the new elevation, I think Mark's right. Mark Cook is right. They have recentered it. And it may or may not be what you want if it's not centered.
Well, especially if you're going to put those lights on either side of it, you're going to have this, kind of an odd off-kilter symmetry or asymmetry if with no apparent reason. And again, unless you're right that they simply wanted the door to swing in from the side and not, hit the opening, which, that's reasonable. But
It's
when
kind
you think of how that architecture is so, symmetrical in many details, to just have that door offset.
And looking at where that blocking looks like it comes all the way up to where there are those little decorative kind of details at the top. So you might run into a situation where you might have to shift it to the left and center it, depending on what you're working with there on the dimensions of the doors. I mean, it looks like it's right up against it.
It's very close.
Yeah.
I would think too, if you were really, this is a big project and a big tear up. And my first thought, I have got a narrow garage, and I kind of have to sort of like escape from my car, when I pull in. And
Before you get it into the garage.
although it offends my classical sensibilities, I kind of thought like, oh, that'd be easier to get out of my car because there's more room. But now you've got additional garage space, to the left there. And, I think I would be supportive of just, if you wanted to make it more symmetrical, like that doesn't seem like a big deal to me.
I wish I could see inside, because maybe there's a physical reason that we aren't thinking of.
Yeah,
But
the trash is on that side.
Yeah, the trash is on that side, so it just fits.
no, but
That's
what
your
I'm
physical
wondering,
reason.
no, what I'm really wondering though is whether the header allows for that. In
Yes.
other words, if the header would still allow you to even it up, that would make a lot of sense. If it doesn't, I can see where that's a lot of extra expense.
Right. There would be a new header. It does not go all the way across. It is just
Okay.
over that door.
Yeah, if there's a new header, that could make it an easier decision. I think the siding, if you scooch over the garage door at all,
There you go.
now you've got new siding coming into play too, right?
Yep.
True.
Although, what's this? Well, I was getting all like repurposeful, but the siding that goes around the corner where the other garage will come in, you could reclaim that in order to fill in the front. I mean, we poach at our house all the time. So
Yep. It's a good idea.
I guess I don't necessarily feel strongly one way or the other. If you guys want to just leave either option open, and we can talk it through with our contractor and see what's feasible.
Great. I think our start would be to say we'd keep it as is, but like with the pylons, come back if we need to, or look at explore centering.
I think we're just kind of exploring that that if you wanted to move it, we're open to it.
Mm-hmm.
A point of clarification is it's not, the garage is moving straight south, correct?
Essentially, yes. If you there's
a site plan.
I think the very first one had the site plan on 19. Right. So because of setbacks, it needs to slightly move.
Okay.
East.
Sorry, I didn't see that page. Thank you. That makes sense.
But essentially moving back as close as we can to the property lines.
Great.
As a person with no garage, I'm totally lustful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, little garage envy is out there. I understand.
I'm
I don't care about the house.
I'm just tortured because my car doesn't fit in the garage. I have to.
Oh, no.
So all the
Yeah.
crappy stuff. Yeah, snow blowers in the garage, but not my car.
Hmm.
What a cool project. You guys must be having a blast just planning it. I mean, I
We
love that
are,
phase.
yeah,
it's so cool.
It's 10 years in the making. So that's what we moved into the neighborhood in 2010, and
Wow.
kind of been planning it ever since. So
Yeah, but that's the best part, because when you live in a house, you really learn it and kind of what works for you. Because
Yeah.
you know, people who buy a new house and then they change things before they've ever been in it. I always wondered, God, you never gave it an opportunity to see like what really works for you or not.
Yep, and that's what we definitely learned and changed our plans a lot from what we originally thought. You know, things like the windows, for instance. You know, when buying it, you know, not being, you know, first home, not familiar with historic. The thing was, oh well, yeah, we'll just replace all the windows. But I dove into restoring, so I've restored personally the main floor windows.
Oh.
Point, and have a real big appreciation for their craft and quality with them. So that's why we're trying, you know, we want to save those as much as we can and reuse the couple ones that, you know, would be pulling out. So really excited.
Yeah, it's really, it just always, projects like this are always more, there's had to be pretty artful, right? Because you're working with dimensions that you aren't with new construction, just with a blank slate. So I'm envious. I love projects like this.
And you know, Mark and Bethany, we're enjoying spending your money. It's really kind of fun.
Oof, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
For sure.
Yeah, I hear you.
On the 3D views, and I'm not sure if this is the case on the elevations as well, but it would be good to clarify the freeze board that is carried around in the new gable, if that's indeed the case.
Yeah, the dimension of the freeze board is something that we planned on replicating. We are not planning on replicating the dentil that exists at the top of the freeze board on it doesn't happen on the gable ends, but on the front and rear. Or maybe it does happen on the gable ends. I don't remember. But yeah, definitely another detail that's not shown.
How is the water managed in between the ridge of the new rear porch and the new bathroom?
So one thing that isn't quite shown properly on these, because like you mentioned, the issues with existing houses
And
dimensions. The peak of the porch is intended to match the edge of the new house. We had to, the second story addition was encroaching on that 3-window bank.
I see.
And so we had to, it was a couple things, you know, right before we did this, we realized we were too close to those windows to have that properly. So we had to shave off 6 inches or so and get a little smaller shower upstairs. And so just some of those relationships, those intended relationships need to be corrected. So that porch should be centered in meeting up and not having it come back towards the house. Those types of things.
Mark, do you anticipate that would result in losing one of those 3 windows next to it, or you think there's enough room to adjust it in there?
No, there's enough.
Yep, we that part is fixed already, so it is not encroaching on those windows, and there's enough room to maintain that trim and a couple of inches beyond the trim into the corner. We're confident that will not have to be lost.
And then how are you blending the siding? And you may have talked about this already, but between the east elevation and the addition, because that's just all one plane, right?
Yes.
Our hope is that we will be replacing the siding, like for like, and then that will all be blended in that process. There's a chance that we wouldn't be doing that, replacing the siding, and then I guess they'll have to probably take some of the existing siding off to blend it properly. But right now, the plan A is that we'll be replacing the siding like for like on the house.
One increasing as it looks like, at least I felt like it's all basement windows.
Kim, your audio got a little bit weird. Didn't hear that very
Oh,
well.
sorry. Can you hear me now, Bethany?
Yeah.
Sorry. Just to double check on this, it looks like you're replacing all of the basement windows as part of the project.
Yes.
Sorry, Kim, was there something else you wanted to say there?
Some of the images had it highlighted with a yellow box around it and some didn't. And so that's why I was just clarifying that
Okay, sure.
I thought I would see it in one, but that I didn't see it in the other. I just wanted to make sure that that I read it correctly.
Yes, we are intending on replacing all of the basement windows.
Can I interrupt to say something that's actually unrelated? But I don't know if you can see this. A friend of mine just sent me the picture from the city's webcam, and just a reminder that we live in a very beautiful place. I don't know if it's up or not, but
Can't see it.
no,
Your video's
sorry.
off, John.
Yeah, John, we can't see you.
Okay, sorry. Anyway, it's just the sun is just dropping below the horizon and probably Milwaukee, and no problem. Go back to work.
Can you throw a link into the chat?
Throw a link into the chat. Wow, you don't want much, do you?
That's not.
I don't know.
I'm sorry. I totally interrupted, but go on back to.
I think I'm pretty comfortable with my questions and stuff at this point. You know, as we're just kind of sitting here staring at the project, if for some reason, you know, the blending of that siding doesn't turn out very good, you can always just throw a downspout right there. The reason I bring that up and I'm sensitive to it is my house has a very similar condition.
Oh.
And from a massing standpoint, on my house, it feels a little big and overscaled. And then that transition moment is a little weird on my house. And I've often thought about just throwing a downspout there to really delineate the two pieces, you know, the two masses there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, visually, in a perfect world, it's almost like that little mass that's clipped onto the house would just shift over a foot. So you have a little jog, but you're constrained by the 3 windows on the other side. And from a simplicity of construction standpoint and everything, it's nice to just pick up that plane. But visually, like that jog, you know, it's sort of nice to see that jog, so you get this sense of what's the main mass and what's the subordinate mass, you know. But if if they blend it nice, then it's not really an issue. But if for some reason you're stuck with something that doesn't look convincing, you know, a downspout could be a nice a fix for that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And like I said, they did a good job when we removed that second story bathroom exterior door, blending that in. So my hope is that it would be similar to that, where we can't really tell other than just better, it's less flaky shakes.
Mm-hmm.
Else have any other or additional questions that they didn't feel were answered? You guys put together an awesome package. I mean, this was really clear. I mean, Bethany, you know what kind of stuff we get.
He knows
So-
what we're for.
So I always just I always just want to say thank you so much to people who really take the time to put it together and make it this easy to sort of process and break it down into manageable bite-sized pieces, because you know, we've gotten some cocktail napkins of people who want to, you know, move their home up their foundation and spin it 180 and all kinds of stuff. So this is really
I know. I mean, I knew it was a pretty big application. It's a pretty big project. So I just kind of wanted to make sure it was clear. Because I know, yeah, I definitely have been there. I know how confused.
I know you have.
To like jump from page to
come
page.
back.
So I'm glad that it worked out.
Yes, I don't recall doing this good a job when I came here, so excuse me. Mallory, could I see the motion? I would like to move to approve the application for a certificate of appropriateness as submitted and per testimony for a rehabilitation at 198 West 11th Street as proposed based on the local guidelines and the Secretary of Interior Standard Number 9. New additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction shall not destroy historic materials that characterize the property. The new work shall be differentiated from the old and shall be compatible with the massing, size, scale, and architectural features to protect the historic integrity of the property and its environment.
I'll support.
Are there any other questions or any comments that we want to make or any clarifications? Fairly quiet crowd tonight. Okay, so all those in favor say yes.
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 Yes. All those opposed say no. I also say yes, so motion carries.
Awesome.
Thanks, you guys.
Yeah,
I
thank
cannot
you
wait
all
to
so
see
much.
This is so cool.
You're
What an
welcome.
awesome project.
Yes, we can't wait to get started on it.
I bet.
And then you won't be able to wait to get it finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. That part's gonna take.
It's the punch
True
list
enough.
that's the killer. You guys both know. So
Right.
Yeah. That's what springtime can't come soon enough. So.
yes.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Yeah. It'll be
Nice
fun to
to see
watch.
Awesome.
Good to see
Thank
you,
so much.
Bethany.
You too.
All right.
All of you.
All right. Take care. So next on the agenda are items for administrative approval. And Phil, it doesn't look as if there are any. So we're just cooking right along. I mean, my God, you guys, it's only 5:40. So the last item on the agenda before adjournment is really the committee and staff report. And Phil, I know you sent something out to us this afternoon. But if you want to take over at this point and walk through,
Sure.
that would be
Yep.
helpful.
First item under the committee and staff report is an update regarding the Centennial Park Management Plan and the UDO communication that was sent to the Planning Commission. as far as the plan goes, the Centennial Plan, the request for proposals has gone out. Andy Kenyon reports that there have been, and this was a week ago, he had received 4 or 5 inquiries from different firms that sounded interested in putting a bid in on this. I haven't spoken with him this week. I don't know, I don't have an update, but his plan is the first week of, well, I think they're due, I want to say November 20th or thereabouts. So I will be getting together with Andy and Mark Vanderploeg and just sort of strategizing how we bring those forward. We'd like to have both commissions involved as we select a firm for this. So whether we'll see, oops, we'll see see how many proposals we get, see what they look like, assuming we get some valid proposals that meet the qualifications that we're expecting. Then we'll figure out whether we interview 1 or 2 or all, or how we move forward with that. So Mark and Andy and I will be meeting in the next week or so, just to kind of lay out what that process will look like. Again, about having both commissions engaged in some manner in the selection, as well as working through this process with the consultant as they move forward.
Phil, do we get to see at all what the RFP was, or is that something that we see as part of their response?
I could only hear part of that. Do
Oh.
you see a copy of the RFP?
I'm just curious. Yeah, do we get to see the RFP as
Sure.
part of their response, or can we see it in advance?
Yeah, I can forward that to you. I'll do that tomorrow.
Thank you.
And I'll also send a list of the firms that were identified specifically to contact, as well as the different organizations that it was sent out to, you know, like the ASLA and some of the professional organizations that have, you know, some knowledge about both landscapes and parks, as well as historic preservation issues. We looked for firms that had a strong preservation component in them. Now they may, who knows how they may team up to put a proposal in on this, but I'll send you that sheet as well so you know who has received it specifically.
Thank you.
And then the Udo communication that did go to the Planning Commission, Jenna forwarded that to them just a day or two after she got it. She was looking for comments back from them by the end of October. I do not know if she received any.
Oh, really?
And she said she would be
I'm
getting
almost done.
to report on that. And then let us know when the discussion will be with the Planning Commission on those points. And then if we're there, we'll hear them. If we're not there, she'll report back to us what their receptivity was on those.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions on that? And they're meeting again. I believe they meet next week. And then they probably meet one more time this month after next week. But with the holiday coming up, I think it's probably just one time. They're hoping to have public hearings in December. I'm not sure if they're still on that schedule, but that was their goal, to begin to have formal public hearings on this, on the Udo piece.
Are they thinking about doing that? Are they thinking, I know, Phil, you can't hear me. Are they thinking
Yeah,
about doing that through Zoom? Just I'm watching our numbers, and now that our hospitals are all full, and we've got, you know, Holland Hospital using an overflow unit, and, you know, other hospitals are not taking new patients.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that we won't be having public hearings in the way we typically would be.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't had any conversation with Jenna or Mark on what they're planning to do. I know just from school board activities that we've gone to Zoom entirely now. And it wouldn't surprise me if we all end up there. But I'll ask Jenna what their conversation has been on that.
Right now, I know they have the Civic Center booked for those public hearings. Now, what changes in the next couple of weeks, I don't know. But right now, they are planned for the Civic Center, those public hearings.
Well, and with the regulations right now about how many people per square foot, I mean, you will be limited in terms of how many people can actually be in there.
That's probably why they've gone to the Civic Center.
Is assuming the same.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
screen.
Okay.
thank you.
Yep. And then the next piece on this committee and staff report is a recommendation well, it's a draft at this point, but putting together a draft of material that we can also provide to Jenna and the Planning Commission, whether it's actually integrated specifically into the UDO in terms of process, or whether it becomes an administrative tool that they use as they're meeting with folks. It's an attempt to kind of pull together information on what I sent out was the downtown Holland Historic District, the National Register Historic District, and I'm doing something very similar for the portion of the Holland Historic District edition that was not included in the local designation, essentially the neighborhood around Kim's home. So the purpose is to say, here's a document that the cover page of what I sent out to you last week, the cover page is just kind of a general explanation of what this is trying to do. The document itself really starts on the second page. And just to kind of walk through it, there's an introduction that talks about valuing Holland's downtown commercial historic district. There's a statement about the purpose of the guidelines, principles and benefits of historic preservation, a legal description of the district itself, and a boundary justification, both of which came right out of the National Register nomination for this. I mean, that could end up as an appendix to this, but it gives very specific detail on where those lines are drawn. There's a map included on this, and I note that it's been cut short, so we've got to get that in a little better condition. It's been cut off at the bottom of the map. And then there's a district description. That essentially is right out of the National Register nomination. I've begun to go back. What you see in yellow are edits. I've begun to go back and look at changes that may have occurred since that original designation. I'm going to try to track those and somehow denote that that's as of this year, so it's clear, what is current and what is not. And that applies both to the district designation and the statement of significance, which is the next section. Both of these are kind of lengthy, and they bounce around a little bit, but they give you a lot of background on a number of the buildings in the historic district, and a sense of the evolution of the district and why it was designated and what's significant about it. And then there's a section on, again, that last one's a kind of a lengthy one. If I can edit that down in a logical way, I will try to do that as well, because it does get a little too long. Then the design guidelines start, and this really is what I've revised and sent you today. So it's a little different version of what I gave you last week. The number of points that are hit has been reduced. I'll just walk through the design guideline piece. First, in the new version today, I've got a summary of the key characteristics of the district, and that's sort of generalized statements that are common to most buildings within the National Register district. Then a comment about general guidelines that typically apply with historic properties, and certain items that are generally appropriate and certain items that are generally inappropriate. And then I get into the specific sort of criteria to look at when you're evaluating a particular building. And it's intended in this document, it's intended that these specific items like height and width, mass and form, proportion and scale, facades, storefronts, et cetera, that those paragraphs will be perhaps even reduced from what I've got here, but relatively short. They're all saying should be, not required to be, because we have no authority to require, but it's encouraging, you know, specific attention to certain details within the district.
I did like your last section. And I know you said, you know, to quote you, you said you're stepping out a bit, but I feel like that's the right, I felt like that was the right thing to do, and leans in the direction that we collectively would like to see that district head as well. It's the same guidelines that we follow within our city district, so we should be following them within.
Yeah, the kicker with the city piece is we've got some control or some say in that process.
Yes.
I would suggest we give some thought to some sort of a demolition ordinance that I'm not sure it would be well received from the property owners, but either a demolition delay requiring before someone is allowed to demolish something that they demonstrate that they've done due diligence trying to get somebody into the property that can make use of the existing building and that sort of thing.
I would totally agree. There's certain buildings I'm worried about that would be easier for their owners to do away with.
Yep. And we've already seen it happen.
Yeah.
You know,
there's also, I'm sorry, there's also a demolition by neglect paragraph in a lot of ordinances that might be something to include as well, which essentially says, if you're the owner, you just can't sit there and allow it to deteriorate and then come in and use a deteriorated structure as the excuse for demolishing it.
You know, it's funny because the things that the people who own property downtown appreciate about our downtown are the very things that they may not recognize that those who would be open to just, you know, taking down those buildings would be destroying. They may not understand why, you know, Holland may not have the same character that it once did once those buildings are removed. They don't necessarily make a connection between the building and the experience.
Yeah, I agree. So this is just a first draft. I'm certainly not comfortable with it yet. I'm looking at other versions of similar historic downtown design guidelines and trying to integrate pieces of those in if they make some sense. But I'm really inviting you all to read it carefully, shoot me comments. If you've got questions, if something doesn't make sense, or if you think something's not appropriate to include, let me know. The way the process has been talked about up to this point is that when a developer comes in with a proposal for a downtown building, it's hoped that they come in early in the process when they're either trying to identify an appropriate building to tackle or site to tackle, or they've got one under some contract and are beginning design work on it, so that we catch them early in the process and try to convince them, try to present all the history to them and why it's important to us, but maybe in the process encourage them to do things that are more sympathetic to historic preservation kinds of issues on these. We have no mechanism to force any of that at this point, but it could go a long way, at least to get past the point where planning commissioners and others might suggest they're surprised to hear we've got a historic district. I think that's maybe the critical first piece of this, but so I'm inviting lots of input, lots of criticism, comments, additional comments, things you want to add. If I've missed something, if there's a topic that seems to be omitted. I should say these are all under the particular heading like utilities and equipment. It's intended to apply to existing buildings where somebody's doing a renovation to the building, if they're planning to demolish a portion of it and put an addition on it, or if there's new construction within the district. So I'm trying to capture all of those in general enough language that they'll read through it and maybe adhere to some of it or think about some of it without trying to get too specific on things that we really don't have a lot of authority to control anyway. So I'm walking a little bit of a line on this, but I'd appreciate all of your input. And I know you come from different perspectives on it. So I think it'd be really helpful to get into it with detail.
I just really appreciate the fact that that you are driving, kind of taking this on, because I know this is something that we've been talking about around, but just there hasn't been a stomach for taking it on. So I truly, really appreciate that you're doing this, Bill.
Well, the one thing, Mallory, I don't think we have them yet, but we are also putting together a clear set of maps that indicate each of the historic districts and including National Register districts and what's local and what's federal, so that all of that is kind of pulled together in one place and readily understandable as well. It can be kind of confusing if you just have a conversation about it, but so that's really all I intended to do, is kind of give you the overview and then ask for your input on it. If you have any comments now, having read portions of this, that would be great. Otherwise, we can pick this up at the next meeting. I'm sensing, given we only had one application this month, I'm sensing the applications are probably going to be fairly quiet for the next couple of months. So it's an opportune time to move this along, get it to Planning Commission in time for at least some sort of inclusion in the UDO, but also to get the other design guidelines that were kind of put on hold for a bit, get those together as well. The Holland Historic District Addition piece will have the similar sort of previous information, but when it gets to the design guidelines, it will reference our bigger set of design guidelines, because it's essentially all residential, and that's what those cover.
So do you want us to give feedback to the document that you sent us earlier today then? Is that the one you want us to use for feedback?
Well, that and
That's only a portion
earlier
of it.
parts, the earlier parts of the first document as well.
Okay. Okay.
Even organizationally, if you think parts of it, A, are too long, can be edited down, or B, maybe it shows up in an appendix and maybe there's a summary paragraph. Think a little bit about what, if you were a developer stepping into this, what is it that you would want to know, what would capture your attention, and what wouldn't put you to sleep and kind of turn you off on all of this. So a good critical review would be great.
I know I'm not prepared to talk about it, so I want to go through and read it and give it more thought.
Yeah.
But that's just me. If everybody else is prepared, that they can certainly do that.
Yeah, I want to read it more carefully and give it more thought as well. I did, in my read of it, just have the thought to dwell on the topic of hierarchy a little bit. And so I sent just a PDF to everybody, including you, Phil, just to, I don't have it in my mind how that might be wordsmithed, but just kind of letting developers chew on that a little bit in their design process.
That sounds good.
One thing that I think a lot of people don't necessarily notice is the little quiet domestic doors that exist right on 8th Street.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to think, and I think this might have happened a little bit in the UDO process, But in general, I think we tend to think that it's all glazed shops, and it is, except for pretty much all of these buildings have a private door right on the street too, and we just look straight past them all the time, because the hierarchy really tells us not to look at them. It tells us to just kind of keep scanning and focus on something in a window somewhere for sale, just as it should be. And I think as new projects and the design process takes place for this context, that's a really nice design trick that people can use if they remember to use it, and it's totally appropriate for the DNA.
Yeah, it's a good point. If you look at the section in this on doors, you'll see a little bit of a reference to that.
Okay.
And I've got to walk 8th Street again and just sort of think through these standards against what I'm seeing on the site, just to make sure I'm on target on these things. But I made a comment in there, something to the effect that most of the storefront entrances are mostly glass, but the access points to the upper floors are a real mixture. There are some that are glass and you can see the steps going up, and then others are fairly plain. A few of them have added some ornament. The violin that's on there are those that have added some additional detail and character to it. But I agree with what you just said, Nick. So. Okay, if there aren't any other comments or questions, I do want to add a little bit of a number C under this, or letter C under the staff report, just to sort of present an observation. Last week I sat in, they were Zoom meetings. I sat in on the National Trust for Historic Preservation's Past Forward Conference, their annual national conference. And what really struck me, and I haven't been to one of those conferences in a couple of years, but what really struck me is the dramatic change in focus of the whole Historic Preservation Committee from architecture to history and history of buildings, history, the history part of where those buildings came from, who was in them, what are the stories they tell, and that the buildings themselves are, I'll say simply, just a tool to really convey history. And it was also in the context of sort of Black Lives Matter and all of the current conversation about the limited perspective on history that most of us received as we were going through school and all of that. So it's a real interesting turn on historic preservation. There were very few sessions on anything architectural about buildings. It was mostly on different aspects and conversations about the history we tell and what we should be doing and how do we capture that. So just an observation, it's much different than the last preservation conferences I went to, where much of the focus was on the architecture of the buildings and how commissions review things and that sort of thing. So just an observation.
I wonder if that isn't because the history of place becomes more important in the preservation drive when people think, oh, it's just an old building. But if you understand the history of place, and it's tied to either historical events or the storytelling aspect of it, which is marketing in effect, the storytelling aspect of it, that's the stuff that's more emotive to people. So I wonder if that isn't why we see more of that, why you saw more of that in the conference.
Yeah, I think so. There was a strong Native American voice at the conference. There was strong African American history at the conference. The mayor of Richmond, Virginia was there and talked about his perspectives on things, and the slave market that was in Richmond, and how those are tangible pieces of history that we've somehow been able to ignore or overlook or forget about, that people are beginning to re-recognize again. I mean, I think it's fascinating and an exciting aspect of preservation, and really may help to build the preservation movement, and how important buildings are as tools to tell the story of all of those things. So.
I would say I had a similar observation, though not, not totally in that way, but at the Michigan Historic Preservation Network conference when it was in Holland, there was certainly, at least the talks that I attended, had more of a focus on those types of topics as opposed to into the nitty-gritty of the architecture or of the preservation technology that might exist, or materials and so on. So I've noticed that too. And it's worth also noting that the Mellon Foundation recently kicked off a $250 million grant program for rethinking public space and civic space and monuments. And that all comes totally in the context of all of the monument demolition that's currently happening, in the context of Black Lives Matter, in the context of having certain histories remembered and celebrated and other histories totally ignored and forgotten about, or conveniently forgotten about, and so on. So there's a lot within the design community and within the historic preservation community. There's going to be a lot of activity around monuments and public space, because there's a huge push for some real work to happen. And so even in the context of the Centennial Park master plan, I would think that firms that are at the cutting edge of this are probably also thinking about grants and programs like the Mellon Foundation's program, and maybe piggybacking projects together in order to, come up with some really serious monument proposals. And by serious, I mean not small, but big money and big transformational types of things. So yeah, that it's a very active conversation, that's for sure.
I would say it also gives me a little bit of pause to say, I'm only working 15 hours a week, but it's always on the architecture, and it's design guidelines, it's architecture, it's very focused on that, which means, to me, it means I'm not doing enough, we're not doing enough to talk about the history of the districts, and why are they significant, and what's important about them. We tend to focus on, is somebody doing something right or not? So I think that's a whole nother aspect of maybe a conversation we should have.
Well, when you think, like you go into Collin Park and there's that immigrant statue, but that area by Hines was an Indian village originally, and there was an Indian burial ground there. And so, there's no mention of that history. I mean, pursuant to what you were talking about, that, we certainly chose to celebrate the people who arrived, not the people who used to live there, whose space we took over.
Right.
Mhm.
So that's all I have for tonight.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you, Phil.
Yes, thank you.
Well, if nobody has anything else, which is kind of funny, we can actually adjourn. It feels like early, even though it's not. So, anyone want to make a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll support.
All those in favor say yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. I also say yes. So adjournment.
Well, I'd like to wish you all a good evening. Should be interesting.
Yes.
Yes, indeed, Phil.
History.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully not a good rest of the week while we're counting.
Yeah, we can have.
For
Just the
sure.
night,
That's
yeah.
more like it.
All right.
It's exhausting to think about.
Bye, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Good night.
Thank you,
Care.
Phil, and thank you, Mallory.
Yep. So long. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mallory.
Bye.